don't rent to dirty black trash! Get out before I throw you out like the garbage you are!
Sunday morning sunlight poured across the quiet Atlanta street when the screaming started. A white landlord in a pressed golf shirt stormed up the porch steps, eviction notice flapping like a battle flag, spitting venom at a 72-year-old. Black couple still dressed in their church clothes. I don't rent to dirty black trash. Get out before I throw you out, like the garbage you are. He spat at the feet of Benjamin and Dorothy Davis, people who had paid rent on time for 23 straight years. What he didn't see coming. Down the sidewalk behind him was a tall figure in judicial robes, briefcase in hand, eyes burning with quiet fury. One phone call. That's all it would take. Benjamin Davis had worked the same night shift route at the Atlanta post office for 31 years. He left the house at 9:30 p.m. every evening and returned just after sunrise, pockets heavy with the quiet pride of a man who never missed a payment. Dorothy, a retired school cafeteria manager, kept the small brick house on Cascade Road, spotless, plastic still on the living room, sofa, lemon polish on every surface, roses blooming in perfect rows out front. They had raised 3 children there and buried 1. The mortgage was paid off in 2008, but rather than move, they chose to rent the house back to themselves through a trust, a tax decision their accountant swore was wise. The new landlord, Vincent Hartley, bought the note in 2022 and immediately raised the rent 42% and began looking for ways to push the elderly couple out. Hartley was the kind of man who wore boat shoes without socks and believed wealth made him untouchable. He sent late notices for payments that had cleared days earlier. He scheduled inspections when he knew Benjamin was sleeping off the night shift. He told neighbors the Davises were bringing the block down. When gentle, letters from Dorothy asking for basic repairs went unanswered. Hartley decided eviction was cleaner. He filed papers claiming non-payment, forged a few dates, and hired a process server to deliver the notice on a Sunday morning, right after church, when the humiliation would sting the most. What Hartley never bothered to learn was that the quiet boy the Davises had taken in at 14, the one they'd driven to every debate tournament and whose Harvard tuition they paid for by cashing in Benjamin's vacation days, had grown up to become the Honorable Malcolm Davis, United States District Judge for the Northern District of Georgia. And Judge Davis was coming home for Sunday dinner. The confrontation unfolded exactly as Hartley planned, except for the audience. Neighbors peeked through blinds. Phones rose like periscopes. Hartley's face glowed red as he thrust the papers forward, voice climbing higher with every slur. Dorothy's hands trembled around her Bible. Benjamin stood motionless, the way he had learned to stand decades earlier when white men in uniforms told him to move to the back of the line. He did not raise his voice. He simply looked at the spit drying on his polished shoes and felt something inside him harden into steel. Behind Hartley, a black SUV eased to the curb. The back door opened and Judge Malcolm Davis stepped out still, wearing the long black robe he'd thrown on for a quick courthouse ceremony earlier that morning. The gold judicial pin glinted on his chest like a warning flare. He moved with the deliberate calm of a man who no longer had to hurry for anyone. Hartley, too busy performing his rage, didn't notice the shadow falling across the porch until Malcolm's polished shoes stopped inches from his own. The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Hartley turned, mouth still open mid-snarl, and found himself staring up at a man whose face he vaguely recognized from the local news. Only now that face was carved from granite. "Vincent Hartley?" Malcolm's voice was courtroom quiet, the kind that silences entire galleries. Hartley managed a smirk, assuming another uppity black man had come to beg. Malcolm continued, "You just served an unlawful detainer on my parents, on property I personally own through a revocable trust. On a Sunday? In front of half the block." Hartley's bravado flickered. He tried to laugh it off. "Look, Your Honor or whatever you are, this is between me and the tenants." Malcolm reached into his briefcase and produced a single sheet of paper. "No, this is between you and Title 42. United States Code, Section 1981, Racial Discrimination in Contracts. Between you and the Fair Housing Act. Between you and the Georgia Dispossessory Act you violated when you forged certified mail receipts." He let the paper drift to the porch. It was a federal complaint, already file-stamped that morning by a clerk who owed the judge more than one favor. Hartley's eyes darted to the growing crowd, to the phones recording every second of his unraveling. Dorothy finally spoke, voice soft but steady. "We just wanted the leak in the kitchen fixed." "Mr. Hartley, that's all we ever asked." Malcolm placed a gentle hand on his mother's shoulder, then turned back to the landlord. "You have 72 hours to vacate every property you manage in this county while the U.S. Attorney reviews your records for systemic discrimination. After that, we'll discuss the civil penalties." He paused, letting the weight settle. "Personally, I'm requesting they be treble." Before we continue this story, go ahead and subscribe to our channel and like this video so we can bring you even more amazing stories like this one. 2 days later, Vincent. Hartley sat alone in the gleaming conference room of his own real estate office, sweating through a $3,000 suit. Across the table sat 3 federal prosecutors, 2 investigators from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and Judge Malcolm Davis, robe replaced by a charcoal 3-piece but authority undiminished. On the screen behind them played a montage of Hartley's own text messages, recovered from a former assistant's phone. Slurs, boasts about clearing out Section 8 trash, spreadsheets ranking tenants by race for eviction priority. The lead prosecutor slid a plea agreement across the table. Hartley's choices: resign from every LLC he owned, pay $1.4 million in restitution and fines, and face 5 years probation, or roll the dice at trial where the judge, presiding, would be Malcolm's closest colleague on the bench. Hartley's lawyer, pale and chain-smoking outside, had already advised surrender. Hartley signed with a hand that would not stop shaking. As the ink dried, Malcolm leaned forward, voice almost tender. "My father taught me that a man is judged by how he treats those who can do nothing for him. You failed that test spectacularly." 1 month later, the brick house on Cascade Road had a fresh roof, new copper plumbing, and a porch swing Dorothy had always wanted. The trust transferred the deed directly to Benjamin and Dorothy Davis, free and clear. Vincent Hartley's entire portfolio was sold at auction to a nonprofit that specialized in affordable housing for seniors. Every former tenant he had harassed received a personal apology and a check. On the first Sunday after the papers were signed, the Davises hosted a block party. Malcolm arrived in shirt sleeves this time, laughing as neighbors lined up for Dorothy's peach cobbler. Children chased each other under the same old oak while Benjamin grilled chicken the way only a night shift man who treasured daylight could. Someone hung a small plaque by the front door. "This home protected by love. Law and legacy." Malcolm raised a glass of sweet tea toward his parents. To the couple who took in a scrawny foster kid with no one else, who worked double shifts so he could go to law school, who never once raised their voices in anger even when the world gave them every reason, and to every elder who has ever been told their time is up, their dignity negotiable, their story over. Because sometimes the quietest people carry the loudest justice in their back pocket. Sometimes the hand that rocks the cradle also signs the order that brings an empire down. What hidden strength lives in the elders you pass every day? What legacy are you building that might one day right a wrong no one else sees coming? The answer, more often than we realize, is standing right there on the porch, Bible in hand, waiting for Sunday dinner, and for justice to finally come home. End card, like if this restored your faith. Share if you've ever seen quiet strength win.